Hello everyone, Danas here with ActionVFX. In this tutorial, we will learn how to create these super speed effects in Adobe After Effects. This will be a beginner level tutorial, so if you're just getting started in After Effects, this tutorial is for you. We will cover the basics of After Effects, including creating a jump cut to simulate a super speed effects, compositing energy burst elements using ActionVFX energy bursts collection, an intro to masking and adjustment layer, and many others. Also, don't forget to click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you will not miss out on our future tutorials. And now, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Adobe After Effects. On our project panels here, we have our footage that we will use for our effect shot. So let's select one and hit space to play. So here we have this talent plate footage of just me looking around and then running out of the shot. In visual effects, a plate is what we call a footage where we will base our VFX compositing on. And then we have this clean plate footage of just the background without me. And then we have these three energy burst elements from ActionVFX energy burst collection. And then of course on the top left there we can see the information of our footage. Now to create a VFX shot in After Effects, we must first create what is called a composition. Composition is basically the canvas or the sandbox where we will do our work. So to create a composition or a comp, we can just click on this symbol, and here we can fill the settings for our canvas. We can name it, set the resolution, set the frame rate, and also the start time code and duration of the composition, and hit OK. And here we have our composition. And our composition is currently empty, which we can populate by just dragging our footage in. Now, I actually want to create the composition in a different way. So let's undo this. And I just want to select my talent plate and drag it to the composition symbol. And there we go. We have created a new composition. And if we right click here and check the composition settings, we can see how the settings such as the resolution and the duration and the frame rate has matched our footage. Okay, so here on the timeline panel of our composition, we have our first layer, which is our plate, our talent plate. Here we have the visibility button to turn on and off our layer. And then if we click on the drop down here, we can see our transformation settings for this layer, such as the anchor point, the position, scale, opacity, rotation. You can also summon these transform settings individually by just pressing shortcuts, which I will show later. Okay, so now let's start creating our VFX. So what I want to do to this shot to make it look like I'm running in a super speed is I want to reduce the amount of time I appear in the shot. So for example, around here is where the super speed starts, just when my body is turning, and then I will just run out of the shot really fast. Now first, I want to go to the time code here and hold Ctrl and click to switch the time code from the normal time code to frames. Because in VFX, it's much easier to navigate your shot using frame numbers instead of how many seconds or minutes. But of course, this is just preference. Next, let's drag in our clean plate to the comp and on top of our talent plate. And now our original footage is being covered by our clean plate. Now let's drag this to the end, and there we go. So here you can see we have me turning around and then the clean plate start, and that creates this jump cut effects. So now I want to go through this frame by frame by using the page up and down in the keyboard. Currently, the jump cut makes it look like I'm teleporting, which is not what we want. We want to simulate me running out of the shot. So to do that, we're going to need to add an extra frame of me running just after the jump cut. So let's select our talent plate and we're going to go to Edit, Duplicate, or you can just hold Ctrl D, and then let's put it on top. And then while selecting this duplicate, let's go find a frame where I'm in the middle of running, like this frame right here. And we want to crop this out of the shot. So we are going to select the pen tool, and we are going to click on our layer here and start drawing around me. To create a curvy mask like I'm doing right now, just drag your point as you are drawing. So what is happening here is using the pen tool, we have drawn a mask shape that isolated myself from the background. So if we single out our layer here by clicking on the solo button, you can see what we have achieved. Now if we scrub through the timeline, we can see that of course, our layer is still very much a video. So what I want to do is to turn this layer into a static image. So let's right click, time, freeze frame, And there we go, we have created a static image from the video. Now let's disable our solo here. So what I want to do next is to have this frozen frame to appear just after I disappear. And then we want to trim this layer so it only appears for one frame. And to trim, you can just manually move the edge of the layer timeline, or you can just hold Alt and then open bracket to trim the beginning, and then close bracket to trim the end. So now our layer here has been trimmed into just appearing for one frame. It blips in and blip out. Next, I want to go to the layers drop-down menu and go to the mask here, and on the mask feather, hold click and drag to increase it. That way the edges of our mask is getting softer. And then we're gonna go to the transform data, and on the position, we want to hold the X value and pull it also to move our layer a little bit to the right. That way I look like I already take a few more steps than before. And then let's rename the layer to mid-run because I'm in the middle of running. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. The jump cut still looks a bit weird. This is because if I'm moving that fast, that means I need to have a lot of motion blur. So let's open the effects and preset panels and let's search for directional blur. And then we want to drag these effects into the mid-run layer. So directional blur, as the name suggests, gives us a motion blur on a specific direction. So if we push our blur length here, we can see that we have blur our footage on the Y direction or the vertical direction. But since I'm moving from side to side, not up and down, let's rotate our direction here so the blur comes from the side. Perfect. But of course, we still have a very big issue with the jump cut overall. It's very noticeable, especially on the top left here on the trees. You can notice the cut very clearly. If I shot this in front of a static background like a wall, I would not have this problem. Unfortunately, I'm shooting this on a constantly moving background, with the trees blowing by the wind. So to deal with this, we will use the art of deception or distraction. So let's go to the frame where the clean plate begins. And then on our clean plate here, let's create a mask around where I'm supposed to disappear. Now, make sure the mask is covering me entirely. To add extra points to your mask, you can just hold click on the pen tool symbol and choose Add Vertex Tool. And then you can add points to your mask. So what we're doing here is instead of replacing the entire shot with the clean plate, we're only replacing or covering certain areas, so we don't have to worry people noticing the cut on the trees on the top left. Also here, I want to make sure that our mask is feathered so we have a good transition between the clean plate and the talon plate. So essentially, we are done with our first major step, which is creating a very simple super speed effects. Okay, so now let's create our energy smoke effects. So let's bring this energy burst to our composition here. So now we are going to flip the direction of this energy burst. So right click and on transform, select flip horizontally. Okay, so now let's start timing our element. So for this energy burst, I actually wanted to start just right here, when the energy is already bursting out. So let's trim out the beginning of this. I'll open bracket. There we go. Now let's press S to bring up the scale and scale it up. And then let's move our energy to my body here. And then let's drag the timeline of our energy burst here to appear just one frame before the clean plate appear. So before I start running. That way we're making it look like the energy is starting to build up before I run. And then let's grab the pen tool again. And we are going to draw a mask on the energy burst on the side of my shoulder. And then let's bring the feather again and feather it out. So next what we're going to do is we're going to make the energy look like it's creating a trail. Because currently our element here is just sitting there on the spot. So what I want to do is to animate the shape of the mask so it follows me running out of the shot. To animate stuff in After Effects, we are going to use keyframes. And to activate keyframes, you can just click on the stopwatch button. And since we are going to animate the mask shape, let's turn on the keyframe for the mask path. And here we can see that we have created a marker in the timeline. This marker contains the information of our shape in this current time. So what we can do is to just move forward, and then we're going to move around some points here so the energy extends toward me. And then the keyframe would automatically record these new changes on timeline and creates an animation. Now let's go forward again and move the mask points. And there we go, we have animated the mask. We can see that the energy burst now looking like it's trailing out of my body. So next, what I'm going to do is to repeat the same process again. So we are going to add another energy burst. And we are going to flip this horizontally again and then scale it up. And then let's trim the beginning part just like before and create a mask and feather it. And then let's go to the mask path, add keyframe, and we are going to animate the mask again to make the energy trailing out of my body. Okay. And then I want to add a third energy burst just to populate the scene a little bit more. And for this one, I wanted to populate this right side of the screen, and let's make it appear a little bit later. And then of course, we are going to give this energy the same treatment as the ones before. And then I want to place our last energy here to be at the bottom of the other two. And this is what we have. Okay, so now let's start color correcting our energy burst elements here. So let's disable the elements. And I'm going to turn on one of them, like number 7 here, so we can focus on just one for now. So what I want to do is to give this energy like a dark color similar to my jacket, to make it look like this energy smoke effects is emitting from it. So let's go to Effects and Preset panel again, and we are going to type Tint. And then we are going to bring it to our energy burst layer here, and there we go. So what tint does is it reassigns the shades of the layer to another color. So here we can see that all the black or dark color is assigned to black, and all the white or bright color is assigned to white. So that resulted in this monochrome grayscale color. So what we can do is we can just change the color assignment here to match our scene a little bit more. So for the black color, let's select the color picker tool here and choose the black color of my jacket. And then for the white, we're going to choose the white color of my shirt. And there we go. And then I want to swap the color here. So now the bright area is the dark and vice versa. And then we are going to darken the color a little bit more. So let's add curve, and we want to select the middle of our curvature here and bring it down. So what it does is it darkens the midtones area of our shot. Okay, so the energy is looking great. It looks like a smoke, which is what we want. So next what I want to do is to select both of the tint and the curve of this layer, Control C, and then let's turn on the other energy and Control V. And for this one, I want to change the dark color to the dark color of my beanie to make it look like it's emitting from there. And then let's darken it a bit more, and then copy this again and paste it to the last energy burst. Alright, so now we have this energized smoke effects look, which is really cool. So now what I want to do is we want to add a little bit more light interaction on our elements, because as you can see here, there is a bright sunlight coming out from the right side of the shot. So we want our elements to get affected by that as well. So to do that, we are going to create an adjustment layer, and we are going to make sure that it is on top. So what adjustment layer does is it would basically apply effects to everything that is below it, basically like a filter. So let's add a curve to our adjustment layer here. And if we brighten it up, you can see that everything below this gets affected. So then let's grab this pen tool and create a mask shape on the top right here. And there we go. And then press F to bring out the mask feather and then feather it out. Great. So now we have created this highlight coming out from the sun's direction. Next, I want to duplicate this adjustment layer. So Control D and put it below the smoke on the top, but just above the others. And then I want to move the mask to the bottom here. And now we have two highlight areas on our smoke. So that way, this will give an impression that there are multiple layers of smoke in different depth. So now, of course, we want the adjustment layer to only affect the smoke. We don't want our background to get brightened up as well. So to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to pre-compose the adjustment layer and the smoke together. So hold Shift and select the energy smoke and the adjustment layers, and then let's go to Layer and Pre-compose. And we are going to give it a name, and OK. So now the adjustment layer is only affecting the energy smoke, because if we go inside this pre-composition here, we can see that our smoke and adjustment layer has been grouped and isolated away into their own composition away from the previous one. So now let's go back to our main comp here. Okay, so since our smoke is now pre-composed together, we can then add effects to this composition layer or group. So first, let's add some camera blur because I want the smoke to be a little less sharp. Let's change the blurriness to 2. Okay, and then I want to type pixel motion blur. So pixel motion blur basically generates motion blur to the image because we have this swirly energy going on and they are moving quite fast, so they need to have some motion blur on it. Next, I want to add another blur, which is our old friend directional blur. And let's change the direction here to 90 degrees and set the blur pretty high. So what I want to do is when I'm running out of the shot, the smoke would have a lot of blur because it gets dragged by my motion. But as I'm getting far away, the blur would fizzles down. So let's go back one frame here, and we are going to lower the blur to 10, and then we are going to add a keyframe. And then we are going to press U to bring out our keyframe so we can see it on our timeline. And then let's move forward one frame and set this to 40. And then we are going to move another few frames and then set it to 0. Okay, great. So next I want to add a little bit of a tint to the mid-run layer here to make me fade in a little bit more with the smoke. So let's add tint and maybe set the amount to 50%. Perfect. Next, I want to add another adjustment layer, put it in between our smoke and the plates, and then I want to add an effect called Displacement Map. So what Displacement Map does is it distorts or displays pixels based on the assigned map layer. So let's disable our smoke for now so we can see our effects clearly. Now we are going to change the map to our smoke precomp, and let's change this to effects and mask. And here we can see that the displacement map has distorted our image based on the color values of the smoke precomp layer. You can see how the distortion takes on the shape of the smoke a little bit. Now of course this is too much, so let's just scale it down to 35 for each. And then let's move to a frame just before I start running. And then let's add a keyframe again because we want to animate the value of the horizontal and vertical displacement. And then let's press U to bring out our keyframe. And then let's move a few frames forward, and here I want to add additional keyframe of the same value, so that way when I change the value of the displacement map later, it will start from this point. So let's move forward a little bit more and reduce the displacement map. Great, so now if we hit play, we have a little bit of this air distortion as I run. So now let's trim the beginning part of our adjustment layer, and then turn on our smoke precomp, and this is what we have. Alright, we are basically finished with our shot. But before we wrap up, let's do some minor adjustments. For example, I'm thinking that the smoke at the bottom there is too dark, so let's brighten that up. So let's lock the panel of our main composition here, and then if we click on our smoke precomp, After Effects would create a second window here. And that way, we can adjust the layers inside the precomp while getting a direct feedback on how it looks in the other composition. Okay, so now once we are done, we can close the window and disable the lock. So next what I want to do is to add some minor color correction to the overall smoke. So let's add curve, and I want to make the smoke to be a little tiny bit more green, to make it look like it's reflecting the surrounding trees. So let's switch the channel of our curve to green here, and we want to brighten the green channel just a smidge. Great! So we are done with the effects. The next thing I want to do is to add some final touches to the entire shot. So let's select everything that we have here, and then Ctrl-Shift-C to pre-compose. Perfect, so now we have everything grouped. I can scale it up a bit just to give the shot a little bit more tighter framing. Now I'm not going to show you how to do color grading in the shot because that's an entirely different beast altogether. But for this shot in particular, I used Lumetri Color, and all I did is just load a color LUT that I already own, and we have our color grading. And then for the final step, let's rename our composition here, and then render this out. There are two ways to render out a composition in After Effects. First, you can render through the After Effects render queue, and let's go to the output module, and let's select our render format. I usually just set the audio off, and then set the format to QuickTime and the codec to Apple ProRes. And then set the name and location, and render. You can also use the Adobe Media Encoder to render an MP4 format. And that was the tutorial on creating super speed effects in Adobe After Effects. If this tutorial is helpful for you, especially if you're a beginner, Let us know in the comment section below. And once again, if you want to purchase the energy burst elements that I used in this tutorial, as well as other high-quality VFX stock footage, you can check out our website at ActionVFX.com. At ActionVFX, we provide high-quality VFX assets for your VFX needs. We have fire, explosions, energy, and many others. You can also sign up for our ActionVFX subscription starting at the low cost of $14.99 a month. This is the most affordable way to access our library, and you can cancel anytime, no contract. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comment section below what kind of tutorials that you'd like to see next. And see you next time. Bye bye.